So let us talk about environmental monitoring. What are the environmental monitoring we do? One, in respect of environmental clearances compliance requirement. Two, in respect of environmental auditing related compliances. Three, in respect of consent management compliances. And basically there is another one which is a requirement from the certifying bodies or maybe your customer requirement. So let us move to one by one. Environmental monitoring is conducted to assess prevailing status of environment. This you must be reading in your books also. Monitoring and analysis data could be useful to determine performance of pollution control strategies. Okay, somebody was coming. I think I got disconnected. So it helps us to devise a strategy based on what is the effectiveness of our pollution control devices, whether it is ETP, whether it is STP, whether it is air pollution control devices. In air pollution control devices, it could be a back filter, it could be an ESP, it could be a scrubber, anything. So in such cases, even multicyclones are there. Whether the performance of the system is appropriate, whether it is adequate, on the basis of that, we have to take a decision on if there is any kind of further requirements, any modification, any changes, any replacement, those things. And then to assess the effectiveness of pollution control devices to comply with the legal needs. So these are the basic requirements of environmental monitoring, basic objectives rather. So what all we monitor? Ambient air quality, water quality in terms of groundwater, in terms of surface water as in ponds, lakes. It can be it can be it can be ponds, lakes, rivers. Uh, then it can be groundwater sources. It can be your dug wells. It can be your bore wells, tube wells, anything. And in wastewater, actually, water quality in terms of wastewater. So in that case, you have got trade effluent from your from the industry's process and domestic effluent in terms of sewage. When we talk about water quality, there are a number of other waters also. For example, you see, it is not coming to legal aspect of environmental, the hardcore environmental aspects is not there. But there is one area, which is your swimming pool water. That is also coming under water. Drinking water, yes, it comes under environmental regulations, drinking water. Then there is one boiler feed water. There is a requirement, this much of hardness should be there. It should be less than 60 ppm. Then there is a cooling water. What are the aspects for cooling water? So all these water samples are to be characterized. Similarly, there is a construction water. When the treated wastewater is taken for reuse purpose in construction, then also we need to process it for certain to attain a certain characteristic of that water, and then only it is used. And before using, we have to ensure that this is meeting that characteristic. Now, this is about water, wastewater. Then we talk about soil quality. Soil quality, when we talk about surface soil is one, and then if there is a requirement of soil profiling, let's say when surface soil is to be tested, it is generally from half inch to 1 inch below the surface, below the ground. But when we go for soil profiling, it can be up to several feet. Maybe let's say we had a project in Rajasthan. and it was up to 30 meters actually. 30 meters, up to 30 meters, we had to, dig through a machine, and then this sample was collected. If it was wet, it was getting dried, and then only, the other tests were. So that was related to soil profiling. At 1 feet, what kind of soil you have. At 2 feet, what kind of soil you have. At 3 feet, at 4 feet, likewise. So that is soil profiling. So for that, you have to go to a specific depth. Now, let me tell about there is one requirement, that it is called due diligence. Due diligence is generally what happens. Most of the foreign companies, the multinationals, when they have got in United States, let's say, they have got some kind of regulations that suppose X is running a factory today, or X is owning a land today where there was a factory or there is a factory, and it is sold to Y, and Y sold to Z, Z sold to A, and it happened, the four sellings happened in a span of, let's say, 40 years. Okay, in 40 years, it came from X to Y to Z to A. Now, when it was with A, when A was the owner of that property, and it was found that there is a contamination in the soil, then the entire legal liability will fall under A. So A will be held as the culprit. Therefore, what they do before buying a property or before installing any industry in any land, whether it is on lease also, they go for a due diligence. Due diligence is actually, it is a term which is used for financial also and many other aspects. But in terms of environmental due diligence, we talk about these things like what are the legal rules, law of the land. Second, whether there is any contamination in the soil of that particular land area which is subject to be taken for that industry or project. So that is called due diligence, environmental due diligence. And in that case also, they ensure that soil at up to what level, up to what depth the soil is contaminated, if there is any chance of contamination. Similarly, they consider groundwater also and soil also. Then there is noise level monitoring. Noise level monitoring we carry out in three areas primarily. One, we have ambient noise level. Two, we have work zone noise level. Three, we have DG set noise level, generator set noise level, or source noise level. It is not only DG set, it can be a GG set also. It can be any machine also. If there is a machine running somewhere and there is a sound pollution, then we should measure it. And we have to find what is the applicable limit. If there is no limit specified by any authority, then we have to ensure that what is the impact on the ambient noise. If there is no limit, then what is the impact on the ambient noise? And that also, it is very clearly specified in the DG noise regulations. It is very clearly mentioned how to go about it. Then there is something related to meteorology. Meteorology, it is more important. It is more important in case of EIA projects. But when we are talking about an ambient air quality, when we are talking about noise level, there is also a reference of meteorology, because when we decide on ambient air quality monitoring stations, at that point of time, we have to ensure that what is the predominant wind direction. So on the basis of last 7 days, 10 days, 1 month, and the historical, we have to find locations that, upwind direction, one location, downwind direction, two locations, or one location, whatever the possibilities are. So accordingly, we have to fix. That is one thing. Second thing is, there is also a requirement of ambient temperature. When you are reporting or monitoring stack emission, when we are talking about ambient air quality, both the cases there is a reference required from the ambient temperature, there is a reference required for the ambient relative humidity, and in case of also pressure, ambient pressure also, atmospheric pressure also. And in case of ambient air quality monitoring, we always need to ensure, because meteorology is also related to what kind of whether there was a wind, severe wind, whether there was a storm, whether it was raining that day. If there was a rainy day, we have to cancel the ambient air quality monitoring. If there is a stormy day, we have to cancel the sampling. We cannot take a sample because it will not be representative. Similarly, if it is a foggy day, let's say, if it is a foggy day, then also we should not, ideally we should not go for ambient air quality monitoring, because the air quality, the pollutants will not be able to disperse properly, and they are not going to have a representative sample. So preferably it should be a clear, clear sky day, so that you get a representative sample. And if there is a prolonged situation like that, then you have to mention about what is the situation there from the meteorological data monitoring. If it is not possible to get the meteorological data physically, I mean by your own, in that case, one can take the reference from the secondary sources. Secondary sources, as in, there must be some Indian Meteorological Department offices. They are having in Lucknow also. And there are many other offices, and secondary data could also be sourced from different internet sources also nowadays. You can, and I'm sure that they are very much, verifiable, dependable, so you can rely on those. But you have to ensure that you have validated it. You have, correlated with some validated data like IMD data. You have correlated before using those data, before taking reference of those data. Just validate once with some of the principal one like IMD data. You can just validate, how much difference is coming. So meteorology. Then stack emissions. Stack emissions, it is always from the your chimneys, the stacks. So it can be from a boiler, it can be from a scrubber, it can be from a paint booth, it can be from DG sets, any kind of sources. So there could be a stack emission from all these sources, which is required to be monitored. Now stack emission, most of the there are stack emission required for the incinerators. If you have seen, hospitals are putting up incinerators these days. Some hospitals are putting up incinerators these days, and those incinerators are to be monitored. There is a specific requirement for that. There are incinerators for the hazardous waste disposal, facilities. They also put up incineration system which needs to be monitored. And all those incinerator systems, for them there is a specific requirement. Steel plants, you have blast furnace, steel melting shop is there. So all these places you have for number of air emission sources. So those are to be monitored. Then you have got process emissions. Process emissions and indoor air quality or work zone air quality. These are three related terms. Process emission is related to, basically you are monitoring the ambience of a shop floor. Ambience of a shop floor. Let's say there is an electroplating shop, there is a cement plant, or there is a godown also. Let's say cement godown is there, and huge number of, there is a welding shop, there is a buffing shop, anything. There the process, there is an emission, due to some of the activities, there is an emission, and that emission, that dust level or fumes, those are to be monitored to ensure that the work zone or the area is actually, whether it is going to be sustainable to work it is related to Factory Act primarily, but it is also related to EHS, Environment, Health and Safety. So there are standards by the Factory Act actually, and we have to correlate with those standards. There is no standards laid by the CPCB so far. But when we talk about indoor air quality, let us say we have an office and we have a mall. In that, even at our residences, we can get the indoor air quality checked, and that indoor air quality has, so far there is no regulations in terms of indoor air quality in India, but we have WHO standards to which we take a reference. WHO standards, World Health Organization, they have specified standards for indoor air quality. So, there are different types of aspects when we discuss on how and why the indoor air quality is to be, monitored. There is a lot of possibilities to discuss. Let us take one by one. We will focus on ambient air quality today. Now, the prevailing national ambient air quality standard was published, or it got applicable from 16th November 2009. So it is NAAQS, National Ambient Air Quality Standard, and it was published by the Central Pollution Control Board, Ministry of Environment and Forest at that time. So there was a GSR, General Statutory Rule 826E, dated 16th November 2009. Prior to that, there was another standard, and that standard, obviously, it was overruled now. So this is, now let us compare how these two things are differing. Now, initially, in the previous standards, it was the parameters required was suspended particulate matters, respirable suspended particulate matters, sulfur dioxide, oxides of nitrogen, carbon monoxide, and lead as PB. So these 6 parameters were required as per the NAAQS prior to 2009. Now, in case specific, let us say when I remember I was working in a project of Steel Authority of India Limited in Bokaro. Bokaro was, they were having some additional requirements. One, hydrocarbon. Initially, when I went for the first time, it was hydrocarbon. Then, subsequently, it became hydrocarbon and non-methane hydrocarbon. Both they asked. So it was total hydrocarbon and then non-methane hydrocarbon. So this type of requirements come up. Suppose there is there was one project in Punjab. It was related to a fertilizer unit, and they had some source of nitric acid. So they were asking for nitric acid in the ambient air, and there was a standard for that. So they were imposing that condition, nitric acid was to be monitored, in addition to the 6 parameters. Now, in today's perspective, the prevailing national ambient air quality standard relates to 12 parameters. And those 12 parameters are sulfur dioxide, oxides of nitrogen, carbon monoxide, ozone, particulate matters 2.5, particulate matters 10, lead, ammonia, benzene, benzoantipyrine, arsenic, and nickel. So these are the parameters. Predominantly, it is required as per National Ambient Air Quality Standards. Now let us say, how should we interpret? What is the requirement? Let us say there is a real estate project. Now, real estate project does not have any source of arsenic and nickel, right? In case of even lead is not a source. But let us assume that there is, there is somehow, there is some possibility of lead from, some kind of paint or any material or somewhere. So let us assume that it is required. Ammonia, yes, vehicles are moving. Benzene, benzo, antiparin also you take. But arsenic and nickel, there is no relevance. So what should be ideally done in such a case, that all these 12 parameters should be monitored once, twice or thrice, and then it should be discussed with the authorities, maybe the State Pollution Control Board or Union Territory Pollution Control Committee, as well as the Ministry of Environment and Forest and Climate Change. Any regional office, anybody, they can guide you, and that whether whether the project requires to execute all these 12 parameters, if it is, irrespective of its significance, and they generally guide, they help. Okay, so this is the applicability. Now, these were again the standards in the old notification, the prior notification. SO2 was having some standard, NO2. The standards of SO2, NO2 has not changed primarily, but SPM, the suspended particulate matters, is removed now. RSPM has been divided into two. The respirable particulate matters are divided into two. RSPM, the respirable suspended particulate matters, 10 size, 10 micron. So that is called PM10, and the respirable suspended particulate matters 2.5 micron. That is widely known as PM 2.5. So they have this divided into two, and we will talk about the prevailing standards. Then earlier it was lead and there was CO. Now let us move forward. In earlier, the previous notification, there were standards for industrial area, residential area, rural and other areas, sensitive areas. Currently, industrial area, residential area, rural and other areas, the standard remains same. There is another separate standard for ecologically sensitive area, which is declared by the central government. Ecologically sensitive area is always declared by the central government. You must have heard about the Western Ghats, which is actually the minister had recently communicated a message, and he had a meeting with the different states, 5-6 states, which are which are connected with the Western Ghats, to finalize that notification about the ecologically sensitive area. So it is always notified by the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Now, objectives of air quality monitoring. One, it could be a statutory requirement. Statutory requirement could be, it is a requirement or a condition specified in the environmental clearance. It is a requirement specified in the, let us say, consent to operate or consent to establish. That is a statutory requirement. And even any other authority, if they specify, that is also going to be a statutory requirement. And the requirement by certifying bodies or customers. Suppose the industry or the project is not falling under any kind of statutory requirement, but there is a certifying body which is taking up certification about ISO 9001 or ISO 14001 or OSHAS, OHSAS, or any related thing. They ask that you have to get this ambient air quality done. Then the industry or project has to undertake this. Similarly, if there is a customer, let us say the customer is, we can say about, let us assume that World Bank is a customer. World Bank is funding a project, a road project, let us say, and dam project. Any project they fund, they will have a condition that you have to comply this like this. So that compliance has to be met with. Similarly, NHAI, National Highway Authority of India. NHAI projects, NHAI road projects, they don't require EC nowadays. They are out of this EIA requirements. So, but when it comes to their contractual requirements, the contractors have to ensure that there is, the ambient air is within such and such criteria. The groundwater is like this. So they have to ensure that every month or every 3 months they monitor, they keep a record, and it is shared with the National Highway Authority. Similarly, let's say if some industry like your Steel Authority of India Limited or maybe Tata Steel, that status of industries, they also may put a clause that you have to make this testing done, so the industry has to obey it. So that can be a requirement from the customers. So these are the objectives. Then you see how the statutory requirements, I'm just trying to show two basic objectives is to share about one EC requirement and one CTO requirement. The first one, where I have highlighted in yellow, it is related to an environmental clearance. So the environmental clearance says that the locations of ambient air quality monitoring stations shall be decided in consultation with the State Pollution Control Board, and it shall be ensured that at least one station each is installed in the upwind and downwind direction, as well as where maximum ground level concentrations are anticipated. Now, there are three things. One, the project has to interact with the State Pollution Control Board to finalize the ambient air quality monitoring stations. Now, this particular EC, which I have taken a reference of, is related to a hospital project, and it is a quite huge hospital project. They are having a huge area. Similar condition is also coming for cement plants, mining areas, and likewise. But mining areas, they may specify that number of air quality monitoring station can be 6 also, 8 also. It depends. So the ministry specifies such type of conditions in the environmental clearance letter. And when they are talking about the consultation with the State Pollution Control Board, that means there should be a documentary evidence, and the project, if the State Pollution Control Board is not going to the site to help them in making a decision, then at least the industry or the project should make some kind of effort that they are convincing the State Pollution Control Board by a written communication, and thereby they deliberate or they describe the location, the possibilities, and the number of sites they have decided, and what kind of location it is, like whether it is having free flow of air, and all those things we will discuss in the subsequent slides, but that has to be specified in the report. So a report at least should be submitted to the State Pollution Control Board, and for the documentation objective, there should be a proof of submission, a proof of communication. If the SPCB responded to it, fair enough. If they did not respond, then also at least you have got a documentary evidence for your sake. That is the first thing. Second is, what it is saying? It is saying about at least two locations, one in upwind direction and the second one is downwind direction. Objective is, what is the contribution of the project? It can be measured in the downwind direction, and in the upwind direction, it will be easier to understand that there is no contribution from the project. But sometimes, if the upward direction is affected by some more pollutants, some situational pollutants, let's say in the upwind area, there is some kind of excavation going on. So it has to be specified in the letter, in the report, that the situation was like this. Sometimes back in 2010, we issued a report, and it was, in fact, a harvesting season. So in a remote place, the upwind direction was having more pollutants, and specifically it was related to two pollutants. One is PM10, and the second one was your this thing, carbon monoxide. So it was questioned by the authorities, how is it possible? Then we had to show where to demonstrate that. Yes, at that point of time, we started the monitoring at such and such time, and there was a burning by the farmers in that area for some 4 hours or 5 hours in the daytime, which was after the start of the monitoring. So, there was a contribution of that. That has to be shown to the authorities, and they then accepted, they agreed, they understood. So this type of things you have to describe, whatever description, it has to be technical. It has to be technical. Your every bit of technicality should be involved there in the report. And we all are technical people. We have to, increase our value through these technical information, data, factual information, factual data. So those things. Then, it is also talking about where there is maximum ground level concentration. Ground level concentration is generally, it is considered by within 3 meters, but let's say 10 feet. And what happens? We have to put our monitoring equipment above 3 meters, so that though there is a ground level concentration, it does not impact your, it should be a representative sample. So this is about the EC condition. Now next come to this is a condition specified by, and this is Madhya Pradesh Pollution Control Board. Madhya Pradesh Pollution Control Board has specified this condition in one of their consent to operate. They issued a consent to operate, and there they have specified. You can see in point number 2, they have mentioned 5 parameters. They have mentioned only 5 parameters. They are not talking about all 12 parameters, because this particular project does not actually cause those type of pollutants. And these 5 parameters, probably they understood that these are good enough to understand what is the kind of air pollution this particular project is generating or contributing. So they have specified this condition, and you see here the parameters they have specified is PM10, PM2.5, SO2, NOx, and carbon monoxide. So this kind of things, but here they have also mentioned probably 3 locations. I believe they have mentioned about 3 locations. Let us read it out loudly. The applicant shall provide comprehensive air pollution control system. Okay, that is okay. Then, the second one is ambient air quality at the boundary of the industry or unit premises shall be monitored and reported to the Pollution Control Board regularly on quarterly basis. Now here, this Pollution Control Board is asking for quarterly report from this project. Every quarter it has to monitor and report to the PCB. The ambient air quality norms should be okay. They have not specified number of air quality stations, but they've specified parameters and time. So this is one way of putting a condition. Now let me come to, please note this one, this clause, what they have written, that the monitored and reported the ambient air quality at the boundary of the industry or unit premises. Now please note this, we will talk on this. Ambient air quality at the boundary. I had raised this point earlier also. I'll put it again before you. Now, how do we monitor? what are the availability, what kind of methods we follow. Generally, we have got three ways of data generation, ambient air quality data generation. One is, the manual monitoring. Manual monitoring is like, we put one PM10 sampler, one PM2.5 sampler, and then, it is run for 24 hours without any disturbance, continuously, that means. And the gases, as you see here, I would go back. Carbon monoxide, they are talking about 8 hourly basis, and all other will be 24 hourly basis. So all the monitoring, manual monitoring, can be conducted in this way. So the SO2, NO2, and whatever is required, 24 hourly as well as 8 hourly, the monitoring can be done from the manual monitoring. So what happens? Studies have found that average error ranges from 10 to 26% of particulate matter, primarily because of incorrect flow measurement and calibration. Moreover, inconsistent power supply in 24 hours, you note this point, inconsistent power supply and voltage fluctuation affect the monitoring. In case of gaseous pollutants, duration of sampling, sample duration, and temperature controls are essential to ensure that tests are done properly. Monitoring of benzene and ozone by a manual method has been found to be very difficult. Particularly, benzene, ozone, and BAP also. BAP nanogram, it becomes very tough. Ozone, in summers, it becomes very tough. So even then, you have to, this monitoring method is having its own advantage because of its cost effectiveness and ready availability. Then second one is online monitoring. Online monitoring is, you know, you must have seen nowadays they are having air quality monitoring stations, and they display online data. There is an electronic display board, and it displays SO2 this much microgram per cubic meter, NO2 this much microgram per cubic meter. Likewise, in Delhi, in many other cities like Lucknow, also I'm sure they must be having in the pickup bhavan, I believe. So that online monitoring is measured on the basis of sensors. So those sensors are, one, they are very costly. Two, there is no calibration so far. There is no method of calibration or facility of calibration in India so far. So what they do, they generally do a validation, data validation. Validation, how does it happen? They parallelly monitor with the help of this sensor or the online continuous monitoring system to the manual monitoring system, and they compare the data. The data is compared for, say, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, and then it is validated. Okay, there is a validation method. It is not required for you, but you should know about it because it is applicable to NABL related, quality related, that laboratory part, quality related aspects. You have to just understand how the validation goes. So it is basically a replication of data at a particular period of time, and then you have to understand, like, what is the difference, what is the standard deviation, how the deviation is happening, what is the reason, which has to be kept, which data has to be kept, which data has to be rejected. All those things you have to do from the validation. So this method validation, on the same side, you have online monitoring, online monitoring system, and which is depending on manual monitoring. So I just want to raise a question here. Why should we go for online monitoring system instead of manual monitoring? Because it is dependent on the manual monitoring only, right? So my point is, the calibration and cost effectiveness should be taken care of at the first. Calibration responsibility has been given to the National Physical Laboratory by the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, but it takes time. And if NPL comes out, then also they have to replicate it with commercial organizations, so that it will be widely available. Till that time, it is very difficult. Number one. Number two, there is another system. There is another technical aspect that is called PT, proficiency test. I am telling you that there are proficiency test providers, but the proficiency test in terms of the sensor, I don't believe that that is available at this moment, because there is no calibration. So proficiency test, calibration and cost, these three things must be taken care of first of all. And in this, actually, the engineers have to play a major role, and these equipment should be, vocal for local. So these equipment should be manufactured locally, and then only we should focus. I think it was little early, reason maybe XYZ, but it was little early in the part of CPCB to start this online monitoring system. And then the Supreme Court came into, they also interpreted that it is the correct way, but nobody defended the technical grounds. There was a kind of discussion in the Supreme Court, but then it was not that, that didn't yield anything. So on the whole, it is the manual monitoring system which is going to be effective. Third one is satellite observations. Satellite observations, you must have seen these days that somebody is saying Gurgaon is the worst polluted. Now what they do, they are sitting in United States and they are accessing through satellite. The satellite imagery data they access, and they pinpoint a particular area and say that, you see, right now it is 900 microgram per cubic meter in this particular area. Okay, and that satellite data reflects from anywhere you can access the data. That is a good thing. But the major problem, you see, large difference between estimated emissions and actual values differ. There is a huge difference in the estimated emissions and actual values. And the major problem, I don't know whether you have been told, but let me share with you that generally, according to literature, the major problem is satellite data, they don't know whether it is an stack emission or ambient air. They don't differentiate. Therefore, when there is a stack emission at a particular place, they think, it is a satellite, it is showing a picture, and the interpreter is sitting in America, and he or she sees that there is a huge emission at this particular area, and then they talk about this much of, air pollution. So that is not very practical or ground truth. Therefore, the local manual monitoring system is having the maximum edge, or it is the most useful method in today's perspective. Online monitoring will be much better. It will be much beneficial in near future when we have cost effectiveness, we have calibration systems, and we also generate or establish methods to proficiency testing, methods to establish proficiency testing of measurement to a very minute scale, Unless and until we do that, it is not possible. 0.6 microgram per cubic meter of sulfur dioxide. 0.6 is okay, but it is not detectable in manual system. In that case, how do you rely on that data? It is not possible to rely. So let us go to the next one. These two pictures are showing something which is about the manual monitoring. Now let me tell you that the left one is very old one. It was probably of 2008 when the 2009 notification was not there. That means PM 2.5 monitoring was not required. The right picture is showing it is about a construction site, and there is also the yellow top is showing that this is an RDS, respirable dust sampler, which is related to PM 2.5 monitoring, and the blue top is about a PM 2.5 sampler. Now let me tell you, in the left picture, it is on the top of a building, which is very good. Location is very good because one of the requirements is the ambient air quality monitoring machine should be mounted at a minimum height of at least 10 meters and a maximum height of minimum height of at least 3 meters and a maximum height of 10 meters. So the machine should be placed between 3 meters to 10 meters. Okay, there are so many other aspects we will discuss, and therefore before sharing with you what are the points to be considered, I am telling you that the right side picture is a wrong way of monitoring. This is a wrong way of monitoring. This picture should be rejected outright. There are so many reasons I will share with you, but primarily let me share number one. Number one is, you can see that it is just mounted over a table, and the table height of the table is how much? 2 feet, 3 feet. It's not more than that. So in that case, this is going to be rejected, number one. Number two, it is a construction site, and the construction site is having a lot of dust, and that dust will have impact. So this height needs to be elevated to at least 3 meters as per the requirements, number one. Number two, the distance between these two machines, the PM10 and PM2.5 sampler, should be at least 2 meters. 2 meters, because there should not be any disturbances surrounding the PM 2.5 samplers up to 2 meters. Otherwise, it cannot draw sample, because it draws sample at a very low LPM, at a very low flow rate. So the moment you see like this, you reject that sample. Okay, you must note that the machines should be placed, first of all, it should be at 3 meters minimum. Second, they should be placed at least 2 meters distance from each other. And even there is any, if there is any obstruction, any other obstructions, it should also be at least 2 meters away. Okay, now let us move to the second point. Here it is important. You see, instrument must be accessible to free flow of air. There should not be any disturbances. Free flow. So that free flow should be like from three. If you if you make a cone type of imagination, there should be free flow from all the sides. Okay, so so that the air is representative. Number one. Number two, locations should be decided according to wind pattern. As you know, the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, in its environmental clearance, cited one condition whereby it is talking about upward wind direction and downward wind direction. Upwind direction, downwind direction. So location should be decided according to wind pattern. Pattern has to be established according to the historical pattern, one. Two, according to the, because most of the time you are having an idea that what is the flow of predominant wind direction in Delhi, in Lucknow, in Tamil Nadu. You are aware about these things, so that has to be kept in mind. Okay, then particulate matter PM 2.5, PM 10 must be monitored for 24 hours continuously. Gases could be 8 hourly, or grab samples, or even it depends upon a grab sample means it can be 1 hour, it can be 2 hours, as per the standard. Now the minimum number of locations, if it is not specified somewhere, then it should be at least 3. It should be at least 3, considering that all the 3 locations are at 120 degree to each other. 120 degree to each other. Now, siting requirement. This is very, very important. This is what I wanted to share with you. Actually, most of us are not going to get this kind of monitoring site in many projects. In many projects. So let us talk first of all height of the inlet. As I said in earlier slide also, it must be between 3 to 10 meter above the ground level. Second, suitable distance from any direct pollution source, including traffic. There should not be any impact. Let us say there is a boiler. Let's say there is a generator set. Let's say there is any kind of other, if there is some kind of excavation going on, there should not be, I mean, the machine or the equipment should be placed in such a situation, in such a place, such a location that it should not get any direct impact, any direct contribution. Okay, now it is also, when it is talking about traffic, it is also talking about your roads. There should not be, I mean, it should be far away from the roads also. Now, this is important. Distance of sampler to any airflow obstacle, that is buildings, even trees and buildings. And let us say the building is 10-meter height. Let us assume it is a 10-meter height building. Then the machine should be mounted at a place which is going to be 20 meters away from the building. So it must be at more than 2 times the height of the obstacle above the sampler. Okay, so if there is a tree, the tree height is, let's say, 30 meters, then the machine should be mounted at a distance of 60 meters from that tree. Then only there will be a proper fire. Now, in cities, think about Lucknow. Now, do you have malls? Let us say 2 malls are there, and both are falling under EC norms. Both got environmental clearances. How should they monitor? Is it going to serve the purpose? If it is not going to serve the purpose, now what is the fun of getting ambient air quality data? Are they going to be representative? No, because they are not meeting the norms at all. They are not meeting the site requirements. So in such case, what should we do? That is the point we have to think. And I have a suggestion for that. We will discuss again in the last slide. Probably I'll discuss on that. Now, the second one, being technical people, what is your responsibility? This particular one I'm sharing with you. Tomorrow you are going to hold position somewhere. If you are holding the position of a buyer, if you are holding the position of an authority, in that case, generally people generally what they do, they are limiting their roles up to the test report. They don't come to the site. They don't have a glance at the monitoring methodology or the equipment used. Therefore, the entire system gets devalued. I would like to say devalued. The value of the test report is limited to just a document. But this document has a significant role. This is the document based upon which we are talking about our demands. We are talking about whether it is correct, whether it is incorrect. It is the character certificate of the ambient air quality. It is the character certificate of the river Ganges. It is the character certificate of river water quality of Gomti River. So, that character certificate, when it comes to our own character certificate, we are very curious, we are very serious. But when it is coming to the characterization of ambient air quality, what are we doing? We are just focusing on the report. Let us not only focus on the report, let us also see what are the process behind the screen, what are the requirements behind the screen, so that there will be an improvement, and whatever you are putting, the money, the efforts, that is going to bring out some result. Now, one, calibration and traceability. Now, calibration and traceability, over and above, generally an equipment is calibrated and traceable. Over and above, NABL and any certification is there, we just limit ourselves there. And NABL, I agree that NABL, I mean, if you are aware about NABL, it is National Accreditation Board for Testing and Calibration Laboratories. They put a lot of effort in assessment of a laboratory, and but even then, it happens in for one complete year. They come 2-3 days, they come and they just check your documents, and they see the systems also. But then, in one day, it is not possible to describe whether it is correct or not. Even then, they are having a very good system of assessment. But the calibration, whether the chain of calibration, because it is calibrated from XYZ, there is a traceability required, and that traceability should be to national level. It should be traceable to the National Physical Laboratory or National Chemical Laboratory. So the traceability should be there, the calibration certificate should be there, and the buyer, the service buyer, if there is a mall, if there is a hotel, if there is a project, the buyer of the service, the laboratory service, should review these documents at least to understand whether there is a documentation or not, whether there is a proper documentation. I mean, see, the laboratory is NABL accredited. The instrument they shown to the authority, to the NABL assessor, that they have got calibrated. But whether the calibrated instrument is going to be taken to the site, who will check this? Suppose there is a laboratory and the laboratory is having 10 equipment. 10 equipment, they have got 5 equipment calibrated, and all the equipment are shown to the NABL assessors. They understood that they are having 5 equipment, okay, but they are having actually 10 equipment, and because calibration costs, and that out of those 5 equipments which are not calibrated, they are also used in the monitoring. In that case, who will check? It is the responsibility of the buyer, the service buyer. Now, when you buy, bread, a milk packet, or anything you buy, you check, what is the date, whether it is valid, whether I can use within, whether it is possible to use in between the date, whether the date is expired. Medicines you buy, fruit juice, cold drinks you buy, anything, you check it. Similarly, those things are also, when you are buying a service, those are to be verified. I hope I have, because right now you are not holding those positions, so you may not be able to relate this, but I am trying to convey you that please understand the responsibility of a buyer, of an authority, of an organization, because when you are taking the service of a laboratory, when you are analyzing the report of a laboratory, always you may not get these enclosures with you, and if it is a legal process, court cannot verify all those documents. In 10 minutes or 15 minutes, all those documents cannot be seen by the judge. So who will, put those efforts? But there is a necessity to put all these efforts for the sake of environment and for the sake of our profession. If we put these efforts in our profession will get recognition. We will get value. Today, I don't think that we are getting that much of value we should have got. I mean, particularly, I'm talking about environmental professionals. Second is, in collated sampling, as I said, 2 machines, this is related to that. In collated sampling, the minimum distance between 2 samplers should be 2 meters or 6 feet. Some equipment design fail to meet this. Now let me tell you, collated sampling. Now this right photograph, where there are 2 equipment, one is white with a blue top and one is a gray color or aluminum body with a yellow top. This is a kind of collated sampling. One is for PM10, the second is for PM2.5. Suppose you are going for a correlated sampling of 2 PM2.5 samples, 2 PM2.5 samplers. Those two equipment monitoring PM2.5 should also be placed at least 2.5 meter, 2 meter distance, at 2 meter distance or 6 feet distance. So this is very important that you must have this kind of space for monitoring. Okay. Now let me give you a little bit of idea about the costing, how the costings happen, and why I am telling you this is actually when you are going to the field, when you will get into the jobs. At that point of time, you will understand these things actually. Now, how the costing is related. Now, you know that there are 12 parameters required. Okay. Somewhere it is 5 parameters required, somewhere it is 8 parameters required, somewhere it is 10 parameters required, and somewhere it is 12 parameters required. So, costing depends upon the number of parameters. Therefore, if somebody is worried about costing, he or she should go to the SPCB, the Pollution Control Board, and get a confirmation that what are the parameters I or we should monitor. Thereby, he or she can get the costing factor sorted out. Number one. Number two, in costing, what are the aspects of costing? Let me tell you, when we are talking about PM10, there is a filter paper involved, and the filter paper are of different quality. There are some filter paper which you can get for 500 rupees, and there are Wattman filter paper which you get at least 200 rupees, 250 rupees. Number one. Number two, you have got PM2.5 sampler. There are two filter papers. One filter paper is for PM2.5 and one filter paper, they are very small filter papers, and one filter paper is just to hold the PM10. So the PM10 filter paper which is to be held or retained, that is not that much costly, but the other one, the PM2.5 filter paper, is costly. Okay. And it is also somewhere around, if you talk about 100 filter papers, it also costs somewhere around 1200 rupees or something. So it is also going to cost around 120. I am talking about the qualitative one. Then you have got other factors. Number one, you have got SO2, NOx, carbon monoxide, lead. Now, when it comes to lead, then you cannot use this 250 rupees filter paper. At that point of time, you have to go for ashless filter paper. That means EPM. There is a filter paper which is called EPM 2000. That filter paper quality required, and that costs 4,000 rupees per filter paper. 4,000 rupees per filter paper, and that filter paper is ideally used for lead, arsenic, nickel. These three, they will require that filter paper. Okay, this is one aspect I told. Then other aspects are there. You have to take this machines, the equipment has to be taken to the site. There is a transportation factor involved. There is a manual, there is a factor of the personnel you are using, that is there. So that is an overhead expenditure. Okay. Then, all the equipment you need to calibrate. Calibration depends upon, the equipment's, the components. Suppose there is a rotameter. The rotameter or flow meter required to be calibrated maybe once in 2 years. Timer is required to be calibrated once in 4 years. Example, I'm just giving example. You'll go get all this data in NABL ISO 17025. Okay, so those system has to be established, and SOP has to be prepared, standard operating procedures. According to the SOP, it has to be calibrated. So any equipment, any component of the equipment will not require calibration will require a calibration at least once in 2 years. Once in 2 years. Therefore, that calibration costing is there. Then there is a costing of CRM, certified reference material, certified reference material or standard reference materials. Let us forget about PM10, PM2.5. There is no standard reference materials, but in SO2 there is a requirement. But in SO2, what happens? If you have read about the mechanism of the monitoring methodology, there is a chemical called pararosanilin. That pararosanilin, the quality control requirement says that pararosanilin solution should be tested at a particular time, and it should be checked, like if the uh, wavelength of that solution is such and such, if it is meeting the requirement. So pararosanilin has to be taken into that consideration. There is some kind of the standard reference materials for SO2. NOx, yes, there are some reference materials. Uh, Ozone, you have got reference materials. Everything you will be having reference materials. Even lead, you have got reference material. But lead, arsenic, your nickel, arsenic, nickel, and benzoantipyrine. These are uh, to be reported in nanogram per cubic meter. Nanogram, not microgram. Nanogram means what kind of detection level you are going into and what are the equipment you require. In that case, your requirement has to your equipment is required to get into so low level of detection that that also you have to buy CRMs of that low level concentration. So what is the costing involved? Now, why I am telling you this? Accordingly, you need to see whether the costing raised by a laboratory, or if you are going to work in a laboratory, then you will also arrange to make a costing of that laboratory. If you are going to work in EIA, then you can validate the cost of a laboratory. Whether the costings of the sample is as per the, I mean, they have considered all these factors. This is what I'm saying. Ideally, monitoring of one ambient air quality sample should never be less than, it should never be less than 12,000 rupees ideally, and it is minimum. I'm saying it should never be less than 12,000 rupees. But you will find in many cases there are people who are showing 4,000 rupees, 4,200 rupees. Now these kind of costing or this kind of commercial factors, these are actually, I think these are fake. You have to be very serious about this aspect, costing factor. Okay, I think I have, you can ask me any questions, because if I missed something, I can clarify it. Then, laboratory to monitoring site, this is a costing factor I've told you. Facilities. At the site, the facility required is free electricity by the laboratory, by the laboratory. I mean, from the project people, they should provide free electricity. Transportation should be by the laboratory only. Laboratory service buyer must understand the basis of price difference, irrespective of certification and recognition. Generally what they do, they see that NABL accreditation is there, Ministry of Environment and Forest approval is there. Fantastic, my job is over. No, it should not happen actually. Because if there is, see, we are now going to have a number of foreign companies here in India, probably because after in the post-COVID, we are going to have a number of industries, and probably UP is going to get the maximum benefit. If I mean, people are also saying the same thing, that UP is going to be probably the maximum gainer, and there will be day that we will be fighting on these small issues, because people will deviate their norms. There will be air pollution, there will be water pollution, and this is a part of the manufacturing process. And therefore, when it is going to litigation, Before litigation, you have to have all those things. And why to go get into litigation unnecessarily? Why don't we, spend time in a better way? But when it is going to litigation, these things are going to hamper. If it is a 4,000 rupees sampling, then it is a fake sampling. Anybody can defend it. So those things are not happening right now. But a couple of cases are there in NGT. Still, it is not very much, practically it is not happening. People are not able to understand that much. I had raised this issue before ASSOCHAM once. There is an ASSOCHAM, there is a industry association body in Delhi. The head office is in Delhi. It is called ASSOCHAM. I had an opportunity to make a presentation there. So I had raised this issue before the experts. Now, in the initial stage, I told you that please remember two things. One, the boundary, if there is a possibility of boundary, because if we are putting the equipment in the boundary of a project, and that project is not an industry, or maybe if it is an industry of 1,000 square meters, or if it is a mall, or it is a real estate project, or it is a hotel, which is adjacent to some other project, and you are putting the sampling at the boundary, sampler at the boundary, at that point of time, there is a possibility of contribution from the other side, or there is no site, the site requirement is not being met. In that case, what should happen? Now, my suggestion is that in that case, a group monitoring facility should be created. There should be the organizations located in that pocket, in that area, should get united, and they should put one online monitoring system. And irrespective of the technical aspects I told, they should get one monitoring system, and that one monitoring system can be validated with the help of a manual system, whatever it is. But thereby, the area, the ambient air quality means it is the air quality of that particular area. So a pocket should, create one sampling station, and it should be a common monitoring instead of just wasting money for a cause where we are not getting anything. In that case, you can find out some way whereby the data is also more reliable, and it is a mass monitoring. Cost is also less. This can be done with the help of the State Pollution Control Board, or if it is a Pollution Control Committee of Union Territory, or with the help of Central Pollution Control Board, or with the help of Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. They are having regional offices. The MOEFCC has a regional office in Lucknow also. The Lucknow regional office takes care of UP, Uttarakhand, and Delhi, and also Himachal. These four states are being taken care of by the Lucknow regional office of Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Discuss with SPCB, as I said, discuss with SPCB and MOFCC regarding the compliance. Okay, if there is a compliance requirement, this can be discussed with them. I think that much I have. So this is something I wanted to share with you from my own thoughts and perception. I hope I made my points before you. Now, please feel free to ask anything you want to. Unmute yourself, please, and ask anything you want to.
Sir, can you explain again the last slide?
Last slide, okay.
Yes, sir.
This one you are saying?
Yes, sir.
See, what I meant by this is not available right now. What I said is, suppose in cities what happens? Let us talk about Lucknow.
Yes, sir.
The largest Asia's largest mall is in UP. It is in Noida. I think it is DLF mall number one or DLF number one, something like that. You know, that
Yes.
mall is probably in Asia's largest. Okay, if that is the situation, and that mall has got an environmental clearance. If you go to that mall, first of all, in the surroundings, you don't have space to carry out monitoring because it is crowded place, overcrowded. There is no airflow. Now in that case, if the ambient air quality monitoring is being carried out, the objective of the monitoring is not being met with, because the monitoring equipment is being placed in such a place, it does not meet the site criteria. There is no free flow of air.
Yes.
So the monitoring actually is not happening in a proper manner. So in that case, what my suggestion is, the projects should, if somebody is having a huge money, then it can on their own, they can install one online monitoring system. Otherwise, they can form a group they can form a group and they can jointly put one equipment, one online monitoring system, which can take care of the entire compliances. And they should, before doing that, they should discuss the same with the Ministry of Environment and Forest or the State Pollution Control Board, or even both they should talk, so that the purpose is served to a great extent. That is what I wanted to say.
Yes.
Any other question, please? Any other question? Let me share from my own experience again. You see how this came into my mind. Let me tell you, I was involved in a DLF project, DLF Cyber City. It is having some 14 buildings in Gurgaon. Then I was also involved in some real estate project in Calcutta, Kolkata. There in the suburb of Kolkata, there is a place called uh, Bantala. Bantala. In that part, actually, it is a leather industry hub. But there is an US company, IT company, CTS, Cognizant Technologies System. Now, the CTS had they have a number of buildings. Probably by that time, I think when I was visiting there, they had 6 buildings at that time. Now I don't know what is the situation. In the 6 buildings, uh, again there was it was a difficulty of space for monitoring of air quality inside the project. You have to come outside the project. So in all these projects, wherever I have visited, even there were some projects of Unitech. They have housing projects where I was involved. They are also the same problem. They don't have space. So for the sake of just fulfilling your requirements, your legal requirements, you are just making papers. But the actual value will come only when it is comprehensive. It is going to be uh, seen from a complete angle, and the monitoring is going to take place with an objective that can serve the entire environmental aspect. Then only this kind of results will uh, serve, and the value of the environmentalists will come up. So that is what I want. I thought that there is no space for monitoring. You are just saying, you I had said, DLF Cybersecurity people, that why don't you get 6 locations? Just you get 6 locations in your area, and it is entirely your area. 6 locations will do, and thereby you will save a lot of money. At the same time, because they are having 14 buildings, 14 into 3, 70, how much it is coming? 14 into 3, 42. 42 samplings. 42 samplings every 6 months. Instead of 42 samplings, you will just require 6 samplings, and that will give you better result. 6 samplings will give you better results as compared to this 42 samplings. But 42 samplings, they're doing at a lower rate. Now everything is visible that how it is happening. So it is very important that we must understand what actually should be the requirement, how should we actually take up for the betterment of the environment. We should think about that aspect. And I will again request you, you are the people who are going to lead the future. Let me tell you, there are certain areas, completely dark areas. One, you know, borewells are very much, I mean, anybody is there in the entire nation. If you want, you can just dig a borewell. Nobody is going to stop you. Some cases there are regulations, but most of the cases nobody bothers, or somehow you manage. Now, once you have a borewell, after 10 years, nobody knows you whether you have or you don't have. Today, in most of the industries, most of the commercial establishments, there are borewells. In Gurgaon, I'm talking about, which is a red zone, which is overly exploited, and it is banned. Digging a borewell is banned here. Practically, it is banned. You cannot dig a borewell without, permissions from the authorities. Now, I'm telling you, and everybody knows that there are borewells because there is no water supply practically. In that case, how do you find out whether this establishment is having a borewell or not? Is there any equipment? No. I have tried to find out an equipment which can trace the availability of a bore or borewells in any areas. I mean, you take an equipment and you find out whether there is a borewell. Such type of equipment needs to be developed in India. One. Two, as I said, the sensors and the calibration facilities. The sensors cannot be developed by the laboratory people. Let me tell you, they cannot develop these sensors. They can only use it. So it has to be developed by engineers only. The engineers have to take a lead. Three, I'm telling you, this PM 2.5 samplers, PM 10 samplers, take two equipment together, and there are some, organizations, they manufacture systems with two, tops mounted in the same equipment. Completely failure. It is not approved by NIRI. The design is not approved by NIRI. The moment you ask them, they will say, no, it is not, we have not taken any approval. It is not approved because, you see, there is a condition that, it should be at least 2 meters away from each other. So these things are to be taken care, and you should, think about, or, you should talk to your friends and find out ways if such kind of efforts could be made, like finding or creating sensors, creating methods for calibration, creating equipment for this thing, the groundwater, the borewells monitoring. Then piezometers are becoming very costly. How to reduce that costing? So these things are to be, and I'm sure there will be days these things need to be manufactured in India. So engineers will have to do this. There is a vast scope. Only today we are just importing sensors and we are placing, and we don't know whether it is, what is the quality, and just it is going on. Today I have written one article about BOD. BOD You must have heard about BOD, pollutant in wastewater, or it is also measured in river water. BOD generally nowadays there are industries which show that BOD is less than 5, 3.7, 3, 2, and there is one laboratory also they have reported less than 2. Now my question, I have questioned that whether these results are trustworthy. Why? Because my point is from a technical aspect, we do not have PT provisions, PT, proficiency test provisions for BOD. And if you are associated with the methods, BOD method is, we have in India 3 days BOD at 27 degree with the help of a incubator. Now, when we use incubator and we take it for 3 days, we use one chemical, rather two chemicals, a mixture of two chemicals that is called glucose and glutamic acid. Glucose and glutamic acid. These two are taken to create a mixture, and that mixture is, it is as per the standards or as per the validated standards, documents, literature. It is having a BOD of 220 ppm or milligram per liter. Now, we have a method which says that we can measure BOD with the help of this SRM, or this can be taken as a reference material, which is having 220 milligram per liter. Now, 220 milligram per liter, how can you relate with 3 ppm or less than 2 ppm? Completely vague. So, what should be done? We should immediately do two things. One, we should create or we should prepare 3 ppm BOD solution as standard reference material. That is number one. Number two, we should have widely, this PT provision, PT facilities, so that the laboratories will be able to take themselves to that level, and the results will be, we can get confidence on that results. That is what is the objective. It is not that it is impossible. It is quite possible. But the way we are doing, the methodology we are following, that is wrong. That is what I have written. And let's see, I have written to the member secretary, CPCB, and the member secretary, DPCC also, but they have not responded so far. Hope so that they will read. Anyway, it is also available in the website enviroannotations.com, enviroannotations.com, and you have to just go to the second page, which is editorial page. You can read that. So thank you very much. Thank you all. Thank you very much.